Let's get more on the contenders for the Downing Street job. Ben Page is CEO of the opinion polling firm Ipsos. Good to see you, Ben. Thanks for coming on. Let's start with you. How split the public are over who would make a good Prime Minister?
Well, I mean, none of the candidates has a majority of the public who think they'd make a good Prime Minister. On the other hand, the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, doesn't have a majority of people who think he would either. So I think a lot of this is sort of simply speculation by both the public and pundits like me, to be quite honest. And we will only really know how the winner is going to do, of course, when they actually start work. I think the second thing, when you're looking at all of these people who are now jostling for position, is that to watch out in some ways for the underdog, because although Rishi Sunak now appears to have more endorsements from the Conservative Party itself in the House of Commons, the MPs in the first rounds of voting, than other candidates, that doesn't always guarantee, if it goes to the country, and there are so many candidates that it's very likely to go to the 200,000 or so Conservative members of the Conservative Party, you can never be quite sure what's going to happen, because John Major beat Mrs Thatcher and the favourite was Mr Heseltine. Mr Cameron back in 2005 beat Mr Davis. Going into it, Mr Davis favourite. So it's not clear. A lot can happen in the next month, to be quite honest, in terms of who's going to actually come out ahead. At the moment, it's Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid. Britain could have, at least in terms of the court of public opinion and how well known they are, an Asian Prime Minister for the first time, and that would be an interesting sort of showcase for modern Britain. But there's a lot that could happen, and as I say, the favourite rarely wins. There's always an exception.
So looking at your polling, would another government do better than Boris Johnson's government, whether it be Sajid Javid, Rishi Sunak, or any of the maybe lesser internationally known names?
To be quite honest, the public's so fed up with all politicians in Britain at the moment that I think it's going to, the expectations are so low that they might have a chance of pulling something out of the hat. But at the moment, only about a third of people think any of the candidates, or indeed the leader of the Labour Party, would make a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. It's just that relatively fewer of them think that nobody much could be worse. Under Boris Johnson's watch, the proportion of people who say that the Conservatives are fit to govern has fallen to its lowest recorded score with Ipsos. It's down to 21. Only 21% of people currently believe the Conservative Party is fit to govern. It was at 40% under Mrs May, and we have one person in four who, when we ask them what is the biggest problem facing Britain, don't mention the war in Ukraine, they don't mention the cost of living crisis and inflation, they just say, our useless politicians, without any prompting. So this is a pretty sorry state of affairs. So I guess maybe they can be inspired by a new leader. And usually, when there is one, they get a bounce in the opinion polls. But the public are pretty fed up, and the fundamentals of the economy that any new leader will have to deal with look really tough. All of these people are promising tax cuts, but at the same time, many of the people who voted for the Conservative Party back in 2019 want to see public services maintained, or in the case of the NHS, the health service, they want to see it expanded to deal with the 4.5 million people on waiting lists for operations.
So if the British are quite fed up and that trust has pretty much disintegrated in the Conservative Party and maybe to an extent in terms of what the Labour Party, on the rise or otherwise, can offer under Keir Starmer, do you think anyone cares who is going to end up the new leader of the Conservatives and Prime Minister?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, people are interested to know who their Prime Minister is going to be. They're a bit perhaps cynical and frustrated, but they know, of course, this is the highest office in the highest elected office in the land. The huge amounts of power and patronage in our system, which gives a lot of executive power to a Prime Minister. So no, the public is interested. They're just a bit sceptical that anybody is going to be able to make a big difference. So the challenge is on for these runners and riders to get through and then do something that really inspirational. But the fundamentals that that person is going to confront will be pretty daunting. We've got all the problems that we had before COVID-19, plus some new ones, plus inflation, plus amazing energy prices, and trying to pick your way through that would tax anybody's abilities.
Certainly would. The challenge is on. Ben Page from Ipsos.